Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights. Here to talk about negotiating. It's not necessarily negotiating one-on-one. In fact, I'm going to break it into negotiation for sellers. 10 negotiating tips. Went on the internet, found an article from last year from Ed Brodo, not a hobbyist. In fact, almost all the negotiating literature deals with not card dealers, but car dealers. So it's all about the interplay between in buying and selling a new or used car. And so you can see that. On the other hand, there are a lot of parallels there. Thanks sponsors, Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication, ComC.com, Burbank Sports Cards, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Heritage Auctions, Huggins Scott Auctions, Topps, Panini, and Upper Deck. And it was very similar to some of the others, but like I said, I'm going to apply this to being a car dealer, not a card dealer, and respond to some of these 10 tips that Ed had that are, again, similar to many of the others. So number one, don't be afraid to ask for what you want. That's pretty much true in the sports card hobby because you rarely are going to get more than what you ask for. If you're the seller, if you're putting it in a fixed price environment, you've got to ask for what you want, which means you're probably not going to get more. And when you're selling your home in a bull market, you put your price out there and you get an offer above your asking price sometimes. Again, that's more of an auction format. If you want to let the dice roll and see how high it's going to go, you may get less, you may get more. But if you're in a selling mode, which is what I'm talking about here, negotiating with a seller negotiating with a buyer, you're rarely going to get more than what you ask for. So just don't be afraid to ask for what you want. Number two was shut up and listen. That really is, I think, pretty true for sellers. For the buyers, they need to explain why they want that card at a certain price, but the seller just needs to listen and try to stay firm. If you're trying to get your full price for something, for you to explain that I've heard dealers try to explain how expensive it was or difficult it was to obtain that item, and maybe say helpful sometimes. Number three was do your homework. Now that's on the seller side. It's a little different. If you're selling, if you have a whole bunch of cards and you're a dealer or somebody selling a bunch of cards, it's hard to be up to speed on every single one of them. Whereas if you're a buyer, you're obviously going to be up to speed about the number one card on your want list that you're looking for. You're probably going to know more about it. On the other hand, if you're a dealer, if you're selling a bunch of cards, you're at a disadvantage if you haven't done your homework and don't know. And frankly, now homework does not mean homework from many years ago. It means knowing the current market, because I have lots of friends that are very knowledgeable, very sharp, but got caught in the price increase of the summer of 2020. Number four, always be willing to walk away. Again, if you're the seller, this is frequently true in a bull market. The only time it wouldn't be true is if you had a very obscure card that was very thinly traded and would not draw interest in an auction. Again, a very, like I've said, a kind of a low supply, low demand card. They're cards that someone's only going to come along every so many years interested in buying it. So quibbling over trying to get your max price may not be the best negotiating strategy. But normally being willing to walk away, again, in a bull market, you walk away and next month that same card can be worth more. Number five was don't be in a hurry. Again, that's the epitome of a bull market. Why would I be in a hurry when cards are going up each month? If cards are staying the same or going down, and again, used cars have been in that mode over the COVID situation, that there's been increased demand for used cars, so they haven't depreciated the same. And the used car dealers are not in a big hurry. Number six was aim high and expect the best outcome. I will say it's good to aim high, but if you aim insultingly high, you may occasionally get a good outcome, but in the long run, I don't like that strategy. Don't be insultingly high that indicates that you're either out of touch with the market or you're trying to take advantage of a situation. I'm not saying to not aim high, but don't aim so high that you're going to be extremely offensive, not to an unknowledgeable buyer, but to a knowledgeable buyer who understands the market. You can push it a little bit and aim high, but if you're too high, you may make an enemy. Number seven was focus on the other side's pressure, not yours. The other side has pressure, and there are two levers that you as the seller can not extort, but can exact pressure. One is the pressure that if what you're selling is scarce, that's on the supply side, or high demand. That would be the pressure that the buyer would feel. If I don't buy this now, even at your price, Mr. or Ms. Dealer, seller, I'm not going to see this again, because it's just in too much demand, or the supply is too low. Number 8 was to show the buyer how their needs will be met. I'm not sure that applies as much, but if you do understand, in the early days, most of the dealers and sellers in the industry, in the hobby, were also collectors. So they did understand what the sense of picking up a card that you've been looking for a long time. The seller can say, I'm really looking forward to selling this to a person who would really appreciate it, but this is my price. I'd be delighted to sell it to you at my price. But just because the other person really wants it bad doesn't mean you should chop the price in half as the seller. So number 9, don't give anything away without getting something in return. Disagree with that. I don't think you'd want to give away anything of value without getting something in return. But if you're selling something, there are many times a dealer can throw something in that would sweeten the offer at the last minute, that makes the buyer willing to pay full price for the one item, even though they're getting something else. But I'm not saying to give away the farm. I'm just saying to be sensitive and creative in how to close the deal. And number 10, don't take the issues or the other person's behavior personally. I think in this day and age, that is not a big problem, especially in the digital format. People may get upset, but if you're not face to face with somebody, then you're just disagreeing, and you can argue back and forth on a keyboard or with your thumbs, but ultimately you're either going to make the deal or not. And so I think dealers, the one thing that separates a dealer from a collector, as I've discussed this before, is the ability to control your emotions. If you can't control your emotions, you're going to have trouble being a seller and being a dealer. And in fact, you're going to have trouble being a buyer, because sometimes as a buyer, unless you're extremely wealthy, you have to walk away or be willing to say no. So those are just the 10 tips that I twisted. They're not bad, but so much of sports card collecting, the fun of it is negotiating, bargaining, trying to get a good deal, but you don't want to be a jerk either. Those are 10 strategies or tactics or tips for being a seller. I'm going to do another episode about being a buyer, and I'll be back with that. And again, thanks for your listenership. If you got any questions, contact me at drjamesbeckett@gmail.com. Happy to deal with your concerns in a future issue. And again, enjoy the hobby.